We're back. Temple Sports Hour here, rolling along on WHIP Radio, Philadelphia's #1 college radio station. Make sure you're following us on social media at WHIP Radio. And if you want to give a ring to Jake, Will, and I, the number is 215-204-9447. That is 215-204-WHIP. As promised, live in studio, joining us today, Matt Vender, recruiting analyst and reporter at owlscoop.com, where we are co-workers. Matt, how you doing? Thanks for joining us in studio today.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So spring practice, really getting going here in the new era of Jeff Collins. What have been your impressions of what's been going on at spring practice so far, and how have you seen things play out that have impressed you?
Well, the biggest thing that kind of stands out to me as compared to when Matt Rule was here and how the way he ran his practices is how many guys they have on the field at once. They usually have two units working at the same time. So on one side of the field, you have 22 guys, and on the other side, you have 11 on 11. So you have 44 guys on the field at all times, pretty much. Sometimes they have 66, sometimes they have 88 in some periods. So it's pretty hectic. A lot of people are working at once. A lot of guys are getting reps. So that's kind of the biggest thing that stood out to me is just, how fast-paced it is, how crazy it is. Matt Rule's practices were known to be well-organized, were known to be pretty hectic as well, but this is just on another level and something I haven't really seen before. You have coaches running at the quarterback with fat heads of Jeff Collins and just some weird stuff going on. But we only get to see, I'll remind people that we only get to see about 20 minutes of the last 20 minutes of practice, so we only get to see a small sample size. But from what we've seen, it's been interesting. It's been really fast-paced, really hectic. A lot of stuff is going on. They're working in a lot during these 2.5-hour practices or whatever time period they get. So a lot's going on, and it's the thing that kind of stands out to me is it's just really hectic, really crazy.
Now, you touched on the fast-paced aspect of the practice quite a few times with what you just said. Like, does that speak to Patinaud's offense? Like, where's that? What do you what's the sense you kind of get around his system, what he's going to be running?
Well, we got a chance to talk with Dave Patinaud, the new offensive coordinator. We got a chance to talk with him last Tuesday, and he made it clear that one of the nuances that he wants to bring into the offense this year, as compared to last year's offense ran by Glenn Thomas, is that he wants to make it faster paced, wants to get up to the line and run some no huddle, and do some different things with that. As compared to last year where they really were slower paced, were trying to control the time of possession and keep the defense off the field, because they had such a dominant defense and a great running game. They still have a really good running back in Raquel Armstead, and I'm sure they're going to run him hard this year. I'm sure they're going to work in David Hood and Jagger Gardner. So I think you'll see some wrinkles from last year, but I think definitely you're going to see some faster pace at times, and you're going to see some up-tempo offense, regardless of who the quarterback is.
Right, so I was just about to get to that. So you mentioned the high-pace offense. Not something that we were accustomed to with Rule. Sometimes he ran a little bit of a quicker tempo. But who do you think, I know it's early, who do you think you would give the nod to starting quarterback?
Well, I guess you have to go with the guy who we've seen get the most first-team reps, and that's been Logan Marchi. We've seen him, whenever we're at practice, it seems like I'd say most of the time he's the guy working with the first-teamers. They do work in Anthony Russo with the first-teamers. They do work in Frank Nutile with the first-teamers. We've seen even the true freshman, mid-year enrollee, Todd Centeo, get some first-team reps. So they're working everybody in, but for the most part, it's been Logan Marchi. And Logan has his moments where you kind of see him, go and do this weird sidearm throw where he gets out on the run and rolls to his right and has this little awkward sidearm throw where he kind of just flicks it. So he'll have some ugly moments, but he also, he can improvise and make some plays with his legs, which is something Dave Patinaud definitely, I think, would look for in a quarterback. The ideal situation for Dave Patinaud is probably to have a guy that can run the option a little bit and get around. So Marchi has that going for him, and the fact that he's a veteran. I mean, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's been in the program. So I think all of that combined with the fact that they're going to start the season at Notre Dame and all that craziness, I think Marchi's probably the slight favorite, although I truly do believe it's an open competition, and it wouldn't surprise me if they rolled out Russo or even Centeo. It wouldn't surprise me with anything right now. It's early, but Marchi would have to probably be the early slight favorite, I'd say.
And do you think, as we're talking with Matt Vender here, recruiting analyst and reporter for AlScoop.com, do you think that game in South Bend, the first week of the season, without a quarterback returning, like this is the first time Temple's going to have to actually look for a quarterback with Philip Walker being gone now. Do you think that has anything to do with the type of quarterback that they may start, that they may go with a guy like Logan Marchie that has a little experience? Him and Newtile don't have a lot of college experience playing on the field, but do you think that the game kind of may decide who Jeff Collins ultimately picks to start in that role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it maybe, that goes into the decision a little bit. Although I don't know how much I believe it that much, because you look at it, none of these guys have really played much in college games. I mean, I think Marchie and Newtile have combined to throw something like 11 throws. I think you brought up on our podcast last week. None of these guys have really gotten into a college game and thrown in a meaningless time. The time that Newtile and Marchie have played, it's just been garbage time. I think they're all kind of in the same boat. Obviously, Newtile's a redshirt junior and has been in the program for a while, and Marchie's a redshirt sophomore and has been in the program for a while. So, they do have some experience in practices and just learning the offense and stuff. But I think it might give a slight advantage to Newtile and Marchie, but I really don't think it's going to contribute too much into the decision for the starting quarterback, because overall the starting quarterback, they're going to pick the guy who they feel is best suited to give them the best chance to win throughout the whole season, not just Notre Dame.
Now, we know this is going to be a defensive-oriented team, defensive-minded head coach, but we're losing a lot of key players defensively from last season. Who do you think's got the ability to step up from what you've seen and fill in those key leadership roles defensively?
Well, when you look at the defense, I still think it's going to be one of the strengths of this team. I think it will be the strength of this team is the defense. They still have a lot of talent on this defense, but when you look at the defensive end spot, the edge rushers, I think that's a spot where you do lose a lot. I mean, you lose Hassan Reddick, you lose Praise Martin Aguike, who in the second half of the season really turned it on and was a force on the other side of Hassan Reddick. So you lose Avery Ellis, who was a good player in limited snaps. You lose Ramon Deloach, who played a little bit of defensive end. So you lose a lot of pass rushers on the edge. I think you're going to look at a redshirt freshman like Quincy Roche to kind of step up. And after taking that redshirt year last year, I think he's suited to come in and help them out immediately. I think a redshirt sophomore and Dana Levine is a guy his name keeps popping up by Jeff Collins. Taver Johnson's brought him up. The defensive line coach Jim Panagos just talked to us today. He brought him up. He's an interesting kid and a guy that started to come up last year later on in the season. His name kept popping up by Matt Rule, and then now with all the graduating seniors, he's going to have that opportunity to come in and play. So those two edge rushers I'd really look for to kind of step up after not playing much or at all last season. So those are the two guys. I mean, if you look at safety, you still have Delvon Randall and Sean Chandler returning. Cornerback, I think, you have Derek Thomas or Trell Foster coming back. You have Linwood Crump, who played a little bit last year as a true freshman, and we were watching practice today. He looked like he made a couple of really nice plays, defended a ball against Ventel Bryant, went step for step with him, and really turned some heads. When I was watching practice, I thought he looked really good. So at cornerback, I think they're pretty deep. But at linebacker, I mean, you lose a lot as well. You lose 3 of your 4 starters at linebacker. So you're going to look for some younger guys there, whether it's Chappelle Russell, whether it's Sam Franklin, William Kwenku, Sean Bradley. Those 4 guys I think I'd kind of look for at linebacker, and then you have a veteran in Jared Folks, who has been hurt through the spring, but once training camp comes around in August, I think he'll be back, and I think he'll be ready to go and probably one of the starting middle linebackers. So you do lose a lot from last year on that defense, but they're reloaded, and I think Jeff Collins and Taver Johnson will put out a really quality product on defense this year.
And it seems like every year there's a guy on Temple's squad. Last year, or it was Hassan Reddick. Year before that, Tavon Young, who maybe Matakevich, takes a big step forward, makes themselves a household name, shows what they can do. Who do you think that is on this squad? Who do you think is going to make a big improvement?
That's a tough one.
Jump to that superstardom role on this team.
I think Raquel Armstead is probably the guy that first comes to mind, just because I mean obviously he's a proven commodity already. He showed what he could do last year. Splitting some reps with Jihad Thomas, but now that Jihad Thomas is gone, I think he's finally going to be the feature back, and I think he's going to be the guy that they lean on a lot. I mean, they do have David Hood, they do have Jagger Gardner, they have Tyleek Rayner, who redshirted last year, who's a speedy guy that might be able to give them something. But Raquel Armstead is going to be the guy that they lean on at running back. He's going to get a lot of carries. So I think you'll start hearing his name in the NFL conversation and stuff like that. I don't think he's going to be a first rounder like Hassan Reddick. I don't even know. I don't know what kind of NFL draft talk he'd have. But I think Raquel Armstead would probably be the number one guy that would come to mind. Yeah, for sure.
Matt Vender joins us here on WHIP Radio for the Temple Sports Hour. He's with AlScoop.com. And there's a lot of question marks heading into the season, Matt. You have the quarterbacks. You have the wide receiving core, which is probably the biggest staple on the offensive side. But what do you think is the biggest question that needs to be answered for this team before they take the trip to Notre Dame?
I'd still say the edge rushers are concerned, but I think the offensive line is probably the biggest concern right now. Based off last year where they struggled at times last year. I mean, you do return, you lose Deion Dawkins, who's, going to be drafted probably on the second day in the draft. But you do have Leon Johnson coming back, whether he slides over to left tackle or stays at right tackle. He's a returning starter. He's been hurt. He had an off-season shoulder surgery, so he's been out and has his arm in a right sling right now and probably is going to miss the entire spring. But I think the hope is to get him back for training camp in August. But you also return Adrian Sullivan at guard. You return Javon Fair. You have Matt Hennessy coming back, a guy that redshirted last year, but he's probably going to be the starting center. He's a really athletic guy from Don Bosco Prep up in North Jersey. I think they really like him. So I mean, the offensive line, they're young. They're going to be a little bit inexperienced, but I think that's the biggest concern right now. Just finding some quality guards, finding a guy to play one of the tackle spots, whether it's Jalen Robinson, whether it's somebody else, I don't know. But I think that's going to be the biggest concern heading into the fall. They have bodies. Maybe they add a late guy. They tried to add a guy in Trey Clark from Georgia Tech, and he ultimately chose Northwestern. So they could add a JUCO guy still, but I think right now, offensive line is a little bit of concern.
So with the offensive line being a question, the wide receivers being, like Dalton said, probably the biggest staple on this offense right now, going into Notre Dame week 1 with a new quarterback, completely new system, head coach, offensive coordinator, the whole thing, new starting running back with Raquel just taking over. How much of this offense do you think is going to be ready to go week 1? Like, how much do you think of the playbook will be implemented? How much is this team going to be ready to face this Notre Dame defense come week 1?
I think they have a full off season. Dave Patton, who's been here since I want to say the end of December, early January, working. So I think the players have been able to meet with Patton. They've been able to meet with the offensive staff all winter and kind of get the playbook down. Obviously they're still in the early install periods of actually doing it on the field. We're not even halfway through spring practice yet. But I think they're going to be in a position where the playbook's going to be open at Notre Dame. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue by then. The coaching staff is allowed to work with the players a lot, just in meetings and helping them get the playbook down off the field. I think by the time Notre Dame rolls around, I think the full playbook will be available.
Matt, everyone. I think thought well of Matt Rule, thought he was a genuine guy. We here say the most important thing that he did was build a culture of, sticking together, playing hard. What have you seen from Jeff Collins in terms of temperament compared to Matt Rule?
Again, we only get to see the last 20 minutes of practice, so it's sometimes hard to kind of see what a coach is really like when he's actually out there on the field. But he's certainly fiery. He gets on guys sometimes, and same with Matt. Matt was not afraid to get on a guy and yell at him pretty hard. But the thing with Jeff that we've seen is Matt Matt would sometimes stick to, coaching the linebackers or doing different things. Matt would move around plenty at the practices. But the thing that kind of stands out to me with Jeff is, like, Jeff's coaching the fullbacks. Jeff's going over to coach the linebackers. Jeff's checking out the receivers. He's going all over the place and kind of checking out different spots and not just sticking with the defense. I mean, he's known as a really good defensive coordinator. That's his pedigree, and that's, how he became a college head coach. But, he's not shy about going around and going to the offensive side of the ball. He's a fiery guy. So, I think I'd say he has some similarities to Matt Rhule. I mean, they obviously coached together before. They're still good friends. So, they have some similarities, and you see it in their style a little bit when they're on the field. I think they're pretty equally as fiery, it seems like.
And one last question here with Matt Vender of AlScoop.com. He does good work recruiting analysis, and he's a reporter there as well. And Matt, you've seen a lot so far in spring practice. It's only been a couple weeks. You've seen a few practices. Who has been the biggest breakout star in camp so far that you have seen grow quite a bit since the beginning?
I'd say, I think there's a couple guys I'll give you. I mean, I think Adonis Jennings has made some really impressive plays. I mean, he had this touchdown catch today where he just went over Linwood Crump's, just went above Linwood Crump and went up and got a ball in the end zone that I don't think a lot of guys would have been able to get. That was an impressive catch, and it was good coverage, and Linwood Crump couldn't do much about it. So Adonis Jennings, I mean, I know you have Keith Kirkwood, you have Ventel Bryant, two guys that get talked about a lot, but Adonis Jennings is probably one of the fastest guys on the team, and that doesn't get talked about a lot, but he's really, really fast. He's big, physical. He's pretty much everything you look for in a receiver. So even with Kirkwood and Ventel Bryant and Isaiah Wright and Broderick Yancey and some other receivers, Adonis Jennings is certainly a guy that I'd look for. To have a big year, and you saw, in the bowl game, what he can do. So he'd be one. I'd say Dana Levine is another guy. If you're looking for, an edge rusher, I think he's going to be one of their top pass rushers this season. I know nobody's really seen much of him in actual game action for his first 3 years in the program. He hasn't really played, but I definitely think he's primed to, come in and be one of the top edge rushers on this team. So those are probably the two guys right now. I can't say that like a quarterback has really taken stepped up and kind of separated themselves from what we've seen. So I'd say those two guys are probably the two that have stood out the most to me.
All right, Matt, thanks for hopping on with us and coming in studio. A lot of good stuff from spring practice. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys.